When it comes to growing your career, there is no shortage of advice that's out there. With the online sea of information, books, and even those colleagues that you work with, there is a tremendous amount of information that's out there to help you grow your career. Now, inside operations and strategy, I've worked with countless individuals who have been entirely frustrated because the advice that they received is outdated, or it doesn't work, or they see no signs of career growth. Inside today's video, what we're going to focus on is really debunking career myths that are prohibiting you from moving yourself forward. Hey everyone, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jennifer Fellin. I'm a career strategist and leadership expert here to help you bridge the gaps of where you are to where you want to be inside your career. You're more than welcome to check out my website, jenniferfellin.com, where I host a tremendous amount of content centering around how to move your career from stagnation to growth. If you're interested, you're more than welcome to check out some of the links below that'll welcome you inside some of my top free resources that are out there. All right, you clicked through because you're genuinely interested in busting the career myths that are currently out there and what does and what doesn't work in helping you move your career forward. Let's get started. All right, the first myth that we're going to talk about debunking is that you have to have the perfect resume. The perfect resume for every individual isn't exactly as perfect as relevancy and results. Making sure that you're able to take time to have a generic resume and a tailored resume is going to be very important. And let me break both of those down. A lot of times, many individuals out there recommend that don't have a generic resume, don't have something that falls flat. A generic resume is actually a really great thing to have. In fact, it's really good to have when you go to networking events or job fair events. You're not really sure which companies are going to be there, and that's a good thing because when you have a generic resume, you're able to tailor yourself to wider audiences. And when you look at it further, this allows you to really hone in, understand what companies you sparked a really great conversation with, or what recruiters you sparked a really great conversation with that can really help you hone in and land that particular job. When you have that particular conversation, you then can step back into the second part of this and have a tailored resume. Having a tailored resume can really help you out as well, and this will land in when you're honing in applying for specific jobs. When you are landing or applying for a specific company or a specific job, you want to take that time to really shift your resume. And I've talked about that many times before. Inside the video of how to make a good resume, which I have right up here, you're able to take the time to really craft out a resume. Now, that video will help you out, and it's going to help you when you are crafting out a resume. But there are many different things that you can look at when you are creating a resume. So having the perfect resume isn't really out there, and you shouldn't spend a tremendous amount of time trying to hone in, rewrite, and make it perfect, because what you're really trying to do is really tailor it to a company, a network, a job fair. And inside the Career Vault Academy, I work with a lot of people when it comes to understanding that your resume is really just a form of sales copy, and it's something that's helping you advertise yourself and being able to specify things on a deeper level, such as I led a team or I led a team of 350 people, is really going to be the difference what separates you from the pack. All right, the second career myth that we are going to debunk today is you have to have a traditional career path. Now, linear career paths mean that you stay at a company for a prolonged period of time. A lot of the time we've seen previously where one would stay with a company for 30 years, show that dedication, and not move or pivot. In today's world, actually, linear is only one of the exceptions that are out there, as well as non-linear roles. There are many people that are out there, in fact, 40% of people that are out there really try to find passive income. and they also try a non-linear route. Now, I've talked about this in many different videos on the rise of the gig economy, but there's also a rise on the freelance economy, as well as the rise of those that continue to learn to work online. Before COVID, we had seen a lot of people follow a linear path, and today we see a lot more non-linear routes being explored because people can choose whether they want to work at a company full-time or use traditional or non-traditional routes such as Fiverr, or maybe even going into Uber, where working needs to be on a more flexible schedule. With this, that career where you have to stay in a role for a prolonged period of time isn't really the norm. What we're also starting to see is a lot more encouragement from recruiters or those that are career strategists on really understanding that it's really healthy after 3 to 4 years maybe to switch and transition, so that way you can continue to evolve and grow. How one company does things is going to be vastly different than how other companies do things, and you're able to see that and offer a wide variety of different skill sets by changing jobs a little more regularly. Now, I'm not encouraging that if you are in a successful role for you to leave to try something else, but it's good to have open knowledge of what the trends are currently out there. And if you are looking at different type of non-linear roles, I've talked about Fiverr and Upwork a lot of times. And this is great because what I've seen recently when I've used Upwork is not only are they able to rate you, you're able to rate them. And it's a two-way street, which is a really good pathway. Now, the third myth that I want to debunk is having more degrees automatically means being more successful in your career. And that's not always the case. Inside my recent podcast episode, Finding Opportunities Without a Formal Degree, which you're able to look at right here, what you're able to find is that there's many different career paths, and having a degree doesn't always equate to having better career success. There's actually a lot that goes into it, and what goes into it more importantly is the results and the impact that you're able to apply to a company. But having a degree as you rise can also help you out as well. Now, currently I am going for my particular master's in my field, but I've also thought, what is the return on investment? And as I rise, I may look that the master's degree can help separate me from the pack. However, if somebody slams an interview down better than I do, I have to keep that in mind. But there's many different paths in having degrees, and if they're really going to help you move your life forward. The degree that you choose is going to be widely helpful in being able to help you move forward. Some degrees will help you move forward more than others. Let me give an example of this. When I first started my career, my first degree was an interior design degree. And the amount that I put into it, the salary that I would have to make from that, didn't quite equate to what I put into it. And the investment of going out and doing interior design, the salary didn't kind of hone in either. But that's okay. I went back to school to a different field, which is the field that I was working in, that I found that I liked a lot more and that I felt was mentally stimulating. Now, you're going to find that, okay, it's great to go that traditional path and it's great to go to college, and what you choose is really going to have to be looked at as a return on investment. But what if you don't want to go to college? What particularly do you do then? Well, there's a lot of different opportunities that are out there. And inside that podcast, what I particularly talk about is that there are many different ways that you can get certifications that will hone you in as well. The first certification, or one of them that I talk about, is a real estate license, and being able to make that into a really lucrative career. You don't need to go in for a 4-year degree, but having the license and putting in practice and putting in results will often be a really good return on investment and a really good career if you put the work in. Other areas where you can see a really good career is HVAC or trade schools. Those trade schools have a widely vast array of opportunities that are, as what we've talked about recently, a dying trade. When you go for a trade like HVAC or elevator technician, those are really widely sought after in the market, and there's not enough people out there to satisfy the demand. And you don't need to spend a tremendous amount of time inside the technical schools, but the return on investment goes very, very quickly. The last I had seen, like for an elevator technician, is it's $90 an hour, which blew me out of the water because I actually questioned, was I going down the right route? But it's something to think about. And if you're interested, then head over to my podcast, the Career Vault podcast, and you'll be able to explore that route as well. Now, the next myth that I wanted to debunk, because this is one that I work with a lot of people on, is if you work hard, you're gonna get noticed. When you go to work and you just kind of lay low and you work hard, you put in a ton of results, a lot of the time, most people, they don't get noticed. And the number one thing that I work with people is understanding, why haven't they seen the work? How is it that they don't know that I do all of this? And really, if you work hard and that promotionary rise just instantly comes to you, that's not particularly how things work. And most people spend a lot of time thinking that if they just put the effort in, if they just work hard, their hard work's going to be noticed. And that often falls flat. There's been many times that I've worked hard where my work hasn't been noticed at all. In fact, that happens quite a bit. But you have to go out there and champion yourself, and you have to go out there and really advocate all the things that you've done. And it is not an arrogant factor at meetings to say, hey, we accomplished, we did this, we did that. And one really great way for you to outline that is to really take notes of what you've done throughout your entire year and what those accomplishments are. Whenever you look at that and rewriting all of that and all the cost savings that you put inside a review can really start to have those breakthrough conversations of what is it for me for the next level, what can my career path be, and the way that you frame that can really help you move forward. But laying low and just continuing to work hard and not championing your results, often it will not lead to the doors that you want them to. And you want to make sure that the person that is above you understands everything that you've done to really hone in for them, but what you're doing for your own career. So make sure you get out there and you step up for yourself and you talk about all those really great moments and those really great wins that you've done to really propel the company forward. Now, the next career myth that I want to debunk is when you are applying for the job, whether it's internally or externally to a company, that you have to meet every single requirement in order to apply. Now, that's simply not true. In fact, what the encouragement out there is today is if you only meet 40% of that, you should apply. Because you might be surprised that the skill sets, your personality type, your leadership style is exactly what the company needs and wants to move you forward with moving the company forward. Let me reframe. When we hold ourselves back or we sit back and we say we have to check everything off on this list before we qualify ourselves and we say, hey, I want to be overqualified. Sometimes that falls into a perfectionism and you'll never always be truly qualified to apply. And it's okay if you don't check every box. A lot of the times when we look at hiring somebody, we look at hiring at, hey, do they fit in with the company culture? Do they fit in with the team? Do the skill sets, the leadership styles, do those hone core values fit in? And can I teach them the technical? A lot of companies end up teaching that technical or the way that they do things very differently. And you want to keep that in mind. You should always take the first step because making sure that you take that step allows you exposure to an opportunity. But more importantly, what would happen if they called you in for an interview? And you're able to see what type of questions that they're asking and you can prepare yourself for. If you don't feel you're ready now, you might be later down the line ready to take on that role and you already know what questions people are going to ask. But that door may open for you as well. If you never take the shot, you'll never get there. And that's why I always say, even if you have 40%, you should try out and apply. All right, and my last tip for you for debunking career myths is changing careers means starting over, and that is entirely not true. I've changed careers, what I've done, and where I've gone many different times, and I've even thought about pivoting. You know, a lot of people throughout their life, you start out in one direction, and what I talked about earlier in this video is I started out in interior design. And while I loved interior design, I had a family and I couldn't fully fully provide for my family with the salary that was there. And I had to take a really hard look at, is this the way that I want to go? Now, it is something that I still do on the side for fun, and it's something that I really enjoy, but I found it wasn't something that I enjoyed enough to do it day to day. And I pivoted, and currently right now I pivoted to operations, I pivoted to supply chain, I've done retail, I've done sales. There's a lot of different things that you are going to pivot and you're going to try till you find that career success. And when we change careers, it doesn't mean starting fully over. You're able to actually use a lot of those skills that you've had in prior roles. So for example, today when I lead my teams, I use the skill sets that I learned when being in human resources. I use skill sets from sales. I use skill sets from a variety of different things to be able to combine all of that together and really understand how I'm going to use that in applying for the career that I have. And to keep another thing forward, one thing that I've found is people like that, I have a diverse background. Now that's my example only, but the background that you have and the diversity that you bring to the table can only help you move forward and realize that those skills that you bring, especially soft skills and leadership skills, can really separate you from the pack and allow you to continue to move forward in a different direction. Pivoting scares a lot of us, and it scares because there's an unknown. And when you transition careers, it's like, hey, gosh, am I going to be starting over? Is it something different? But you might find that you rise very, very quickly. So for example, if you go from one set to a very niched skill set. So let's say I were to go from operations all the way into cybersecurity, a hot ticket area that's in the market. What I might do is I might say, okay, I'll take a few years to kind of work in the thicket and really work in the trenches and understand all of the different things that encompass cybersecurity. But after a few years, I'll probably go back to saying like, okay, it's time to level up. I want to lead and I want to be back in that management role. And I want to go and I want to lead a cybersecurity teams or a network or to be a director on that subset. So those are different ways to think about if you are changing careers. It doesn't mean starting over, but there's a lot of different avenues in today's job market that you can take to be successful. Career mess can be super, super tricky with the amount of advice that's out there. You want to take a look at every bit of advice that you get. Throughout my career, I have gotten a wave and a plethora of advice. And some of the advice that I've gotten has actually been better for me later in my career rather than right in the moment. Whenever I receive advice or whenever you have advice or people are willing to share with you their nostalgia, you should be entirely respectful and thankful. One of those things that you can do is listen to their stories, the issues that they've had, their milestones, and really understand how you can apply that or if it's applied at the same time. There have been many stories that I have gotten throughout my career in my lifetime where I have listened and I've thought, gosh, that didn't really help me in that time. And some of the advice I've got, I thought, oh my gosh, is this guy crazy? I would never use it. And one of the people that I thought was absolutely out there that I worked for, his advice I've used the most. And it's actually been quite surprising because at the time, I don't think I was the most receptive to it. There's many different career myths that are out there that people believe or they think or they say, and I hope the ones that we've debunked today have really helped you out. All right, that's going to be it for this video. Between now and my next video, you're more than welcome to check out my site, jenniferfellon.com. If you want, between now and my next video, you can take my free masterclass, A Pathway to 100K, or you can check out my course, the Career Vault Academy. I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.